Question 1, it takes 6 hours to travel m miles. At this rate, how much time in hours will it take to travel 5m miles? So basically, if you know the amount of time to travel m miles, how much it's going to take to travel 5m miles, just multiply that amount of time by 5 and you get 30 hours. If that wasn't intuitive to you, because on questions like these where they use letters instead of numbers, they're trying to trick you, just plug in any number that works. It takes 6 hours to travel 10 miles, for example. Therefore, how long will it take to travel 5 times 10, which is 50 miles? Obviously, we're multiplying by 5 to go from 10 to 50, and then we have to do that. And finally, one last way you can do this is to make a proportion. You can say 6 hours to travel m miles. How many hours to travel 5m miles? Cross multiply, 6 times 5m is 30m, divided by m is going to be 30, and that's what x is equal to. Question 2, 2x plus 4 equals 100. What is the value of 6x plus 12? Now you could solve for x and then plug it in here and get the answer. It's very easy algebra, so it probably won't take you that much time. But on the SAT, you always want to be looking for shortcuts. So you want to ask yourself, why in the world would they want you to find the value of 6x plus 12? Well, if you look at it, it's very closely related to 2x plus 4, because if you multiply this all by 3, you'll get 6x plus 12. So let's do that. We can rewrite it here. We're going to multiply both sides by 3, and 2x plus 4 times 3 is going to get 6x plus 12. The right side becomes 300, and that gets us to our answer automatically, and we didn't even have to solve for x. So just be on the lookout for shortcuts like that, because on more difficult problems, it'll save you a lot of time. Question 3, a length of 8 furlongs is equivalent to how many meters? And then they tell us 1 furlong is 201 meters. So you might be able to do this in your head, but I want to show you the real way. If you have 8 furlongs, and this is a unit conversion problem, you always want to multiply by the actual conversion or the identity. So we know 1 furlong is 200 meters. I'm going to put 201 meters in the numerator and 1 furlong in the denominator. So keep in mind, if 200 meters is equal to 1 furlong, this is essentially multiplying 8 furlongs by 1, so we're not changing the value. The reason I put furlongs in the denominator is because your units will cancel out. And then when you multiply this out, 8 times 201, you don't have to use your calculator. It's going to be about 1600 something. And so the answer is D. Now you could have also used a proportion. We know 1 furlong equals 201 meters. How many meters does 8 furlongs equal to? And so it's the same math as you can see. 8 times 201 is going to get you 1608. Question 4, the curve models the number of fish in a certain population. We got number of fish here, number of months after January 2015. Which of the following is closest to the number of fish in the population 16 months after January 2015? So this is a very simple problem, because notice the x-axis is already the number of months after 2015. In other words, we don't have to calculate anything by months. So they just want to know how many fish were there 16 months. Start at 16, go up. It's right about here. That looks like it's right in between 14,000 and 16,000. So the answer is going to be C. So basically this was just a do you know how to read the graph type of problem. Question 5, what is the ratio of AB to BC? AB, they're telling us, is 20. And BC is 5. So this can be expressed as 20 colon 5. This can also be expressed as 20 over 5. Notice the answer choices, they're just using English. So it's very simple. AB to BC is 20 to 5, and B is the answer. Question 6, each of the whole numbers from 1 to 20 is written on one of 20 identical pieces of paper. The pieces of paper are then put into a hat and mixed together. If a piece of paper is selected at random from the hat, what is the probability that the number on it is a multiple of 3? So you should recognize that this problem is simply asking how many multiples of 3 are there from 1 to 20, given that they're putting one number on one piece of paper. All this probability stuff is just there to distract you. So most of you probably simply listed out the multiples of 3. It's very simple. You go 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, and the next one 21. So you count it up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and the answer is 6 out of the total is 20, so it's C. But imagine this problem were a little bit more complicated, and instead of saying 1 to 20, maybe they said 1 to 100. So I want you to understand that conceptually, we can do this using division. When you actually divide a number, let's say you're dividing 20 by 3, what you're really asking is, how many times does the number 3 fit into 20? So imagine we're looking at a number line. This is 1, this is 20. When we try to fit a 3 in, the first time we fit it in is going to be 3. The second time we fit it in is going to be 6. The third time we fit it in is going to be 9. And so you're going to keep doing that, and eventually you're going to generate the same list of numbers. By dividing 20 by 3, you're going to get 6 remainder 2, which tells you 3 goes into 20 6 times. That's another way of saying there are 6 multiples of 3 in 20. So that's the main idea I wanted you guys to get. Question 7, the table shows the maximum depth in meters of 5 deepest oceanic trenches, and then they list them. What is the range in meters of these 5 trench depths? So very simple question. Range basically means you take the largest and you subtract the smallest, and the difference is the range. So just by glancing quickly, we can see that the largest is Mariana because it starts with 11. The smallest is going to be Chromatic, because it's 10,047, nothing smaller than that. 11,033 minus 10,047, you can do that on your calculator. It's going to be choice D, 986. Question 8, the relative yield of corn expressed as a percent and soil pH were recorded for 5 samples. For the 5 samples, the relative yield of corn reached a maximum when the soil had a pH of 6.8 and then decreased as the soil pH increased. Which scatter plot could represent these data? So obviously on all the graphs, we have the yield versus the pH, and the 5 samples are represented by each of the 5 dots. Quickest way to do that is to look for the graph where the maximum is at 6.8. So in choice A, 6.8 is here for the pH, clearly not the maximum. We'll cross it off. Choice B, 6.8 is here, also not the max because we've got 2 other points that had a higher relative yield. Choice C, 6.8, this does look like the max, and it also says that after which it decreased, so that's definitely true. So we'll keep around C. Choice D, 6.8, same problem. That's not the max because 7.5 has a higher yield. And so notice that when you're looking at choice C, if you would approximate it with a curve, it does exactly what the problem is saying. It says the yield reached a maximum at 6.8 and then decreased as the soil pH increased. So you might have pictured in your head that you were looking for a curve that looked like that. But probably the fastest way to do this was just look at the dots and find the max at 6.8. So C is the answer. Question 9, after a new car is purchased, the value of the car is modeled by a function that decreases exponentially over time. Which of the following could describe how the value of the car changes each year? In your mind, you should know that an exponential decrease means that each time it decreases, it's because you're multiplying it by some factor. For example, it could decrease by half. If you started out at 100, you take away half, then you're at 50, then you're at 25, then you're at 12.5. The key here is that because you're multiplying by a factor, the actual decrease from time to time is changing. It's not the same. That's compared to a constant or a linear decrease. Let's say the car loses $10 every time. So it'll go from 100 to 90 to 80 to 70. And each time we go down, we're losing the same amount of value. So this is a linear decrease, and this is an exponential decrease. Choice A, each year the value of the car is 800 more than the previous year. So wrong on 2 counts. This is more, so that's an increase. And also, given that the amount is constant, in other words, every year it goes 800, that means it's linear. Choice B, each year the value of the car is 800 less than the previous year, so the less part is right, but if we're decreasing by the same amount, that's a linear decrease, not an exponential decrease. Choice C, each year the value of the car is 8% more than the previous year, so we're just going to cross this off because it has the word more, that's an increase. And then choice D, each year the value of the car is 8% less than the previous year. So that's going to be right, because if you take 8% and then take it away or subtract it from the value that you subtract is going to change every single time. So this is going to be an exponential decrease. So D is the answer. Visually, if you want to know what that looks like, a linear decrease is basically going to look like a line. The slope or the steepness could vary. An exponential decrease, in this case, if you're taking away 8%, in the beginning, the 8% is going to be a larger value because the original value is larger. And then as the value gets smaller, the 8% of that value also gets smaller. So the curve is actually going to look something like this. Question 10, the daily high temperatures in degrees Fahrenheit for a city in the month of February in 2017 are summarized in the box plot shown. Which of the following is closest to the median of the high temperatures in degrees Fahrenheit of the city of 2017? So the language might be confusing, but all they want is the median. And this whole graph is a measure of the high temperatures. So don't get thrown off by the word high, because it really means nothing in this problem. All we want is the median. Now, when you're looking at this, this is a box plot or a box and whisker diagram, because there's a box and two whiskers. On the SAT, you only really need to know like 5 pieces of information. The first one is that this is the median. Over here, you've got the minimum value. Over here, you've got the maximum value. Right here is your first quartile. Sometimes they call it the lower quartile. And over here is your upper quartile, or sometimes they call it the third quartile. The quartiles also correspond to the 25th percentile as well as the 75th percentile. So in this particular problem, they just want to know what is the median of the high temperatures. That falls right around 41, 42. And so very quickly, the answer is going to be B. Question 11, we have a system of equations. The solution to the system of equations is A comma B. What is the value of 3A plus 3B? Whenever they want something that looks a little odd, like 3A plus 3B, you want to ask yourself, why are they asking for that? In other words, why are they not asking for A or B or something else? And when you look at the problem very quickly, what you'll see is that, hey, if I add up these two equations, 2A plus A is 3A, B plus 2B is 3B, that's going to get me my answer right away. I'm going to add the two equations. 2A plus A is 3A, B plus 2B is 3B, 17 plus 19 is 36, and right there is my answer, because that's exactly what they're looking for. So notice that you did not have to solve for A individually, you did not have to solve for B individually, and just by seeing the connection between what they're giving you and what they're asking for, you're able to get what they're asking for much more quickly. Question 12, in triangle ABC, the measure of angle C is 90. If the sine of A is 3/5, what is cosine B? So let's draw a diagram very quickly. We know that C is the right angle, and we'll put A over here and B over here. They're saying the sine of A is 3/5, so sine is opposite over hypotenuse. This is 3, this is 5. What is the cosine of B? Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, so automatically you know cosine of B is the same thing as the sine of A, and the answer is choice A. A couple other things that you should have noticed about this problem, we're actually looking at a 3, 4, 5 triangle, which is a Pythagorean triple. So that might have come in handy, just not on this question. The other thing that I want to point out is that for those of you who remembered your identities, you don't even have to draw this diagram, because you should know that the sine of any angle, say the sine of x, is always going to be equal to the cosine of the complement of x. Why is that true? Because we demonstrated this right on this triangle. In other words, the sine of A is opposite over hypotenuse. The reason that's equal to the cosine of B is because B, the cosine, is adjacent over hypotenuse. So the side of the triangle that's opposite A is also adjacent to B, which is why they have the same value. Likewise, the sine of B, 4/5, is equal to the cosine of A, 4/5, because of this side that they have in common. A lot of different ways you could have done this problem, but for you, just do whatever is easiest, and that's the fastest. Question 13, for the linear function f, the graph of y equals f of x in the xy plane passes through the points 0, 2, and 2, 6. Which equation defines f? So we know that this is a line, and we know the y-intercept is 0, 2, reflected by all of the 2's here, because this is in y equals mx plus b form. Notice something about the answers. They all differ in terms of the slope. So what's the fastest way to solve this problem? Just calculate the slope of the line between these 2 points, and that'll get you your answer. So slope we know is rise over run, change in y over change in x. And now we're going to plug in our 2 values. It doesn't really matter which one you use. I tend to like to keep my numbers positive. So for y2, I'm going to take 6, y1, I'm going to subtract 2, x2, I'm going to take 2, and x1, I'm going to subtract 0. All that means is that my slope is 4 over 2, or 2. And very quickly glancing at the answer choices, that means C is the correct answer. Question 14, the 2017 Wyoming State Senate had 30 elected members consisting of Democrats and Republicans. Let D represent the number of Democrats who vote yes for a bill. Let R represent the number of Republicans who vote yes for a bill. For a bill to pass, more than half of the 30 senators must vote yes. Which of the following inequalities represents all possible values of D and R for a bill to pass? So what you'll notice is that all the answer choices have D plus R. And given that it says for the bill to pass, more than half of 30 must vote yes. Half of 30 is 15. More than that is greater than 15. That tells us the answer is automatically A. So I think they were just trying to confuse you by dividing the 30 into 2 groups of Democrats and Republicans, because you might think you have to divide it a certain way. But really it was pretty easy because this was all laid out for us. And the only way C could be the answer would be if it said at least half of the 30 senators, because at least half would imply that 15 is half, and that would mean that you're including 15 or possibly more. But that usually doesn't work logically when you're voting for something. Usually to get a majority, it's got to be over 50%. Question 15, we have an equation. It says in the given equation, C is a constant. If the equation has exactly one solution, what is the value of C? The quick and dirty way to do this is to actually just complete the square. Because by completing the square, you're basically saying, I'm going to put in a constant such that when I factor this, I'm going to get 2 identical factors, and therefore there's only going to be one solution. So maybe the answer could be x plus 2 times x plus 2 equals 0. And that means that the only solution that would make the whole equation equal to 0 would be negative 2. So how do you complete the square? The quick and dirty way is to take the b term, that's the linear term, divide by 2, and then square it. So negative 2 divided by 2 is negative 1. Square negative 1, and that's positive 1. So when we complete the square, we get x squared minus 2x plus 1 equals 0. And so C has to be 1 in order for this to have one solution. And we know this works when we test it out, because our factors are going to be x minus 1 times x minus 1 equals 0, and the only solution for this is x has to be equal to 1. Now if you didn't think about completing the square, you could also use the quadratic formula. Because it's saying that the equation has exactly one solution, I know that in the quadratic formula that means the discriminant is equal to 0. When you look at the quadratic formula, what you want to remember is you're actually getting 2 values here. So you're getting one value when you add what's in the discriminant, and you're getting another value when you subtract what's in the discriminant. So that's why you should have learned in school that when b squared minus 4ac is greater than 0, you're taking the square root of a positive number. That means you're going to have 2 real roots, or 2 real solutions. If, on the other hand, b squared minus 4ac is less than 0, you're taking the square root of a negative number, and that's going to be imaginary. So you're going to have 2 imaginary roots. But the more interesting thing happens if b squared minus 4ac is actually equal to 0. Because what happens when this is equal to 0? Notice that your whole radical drops out, and then you're simply left with negative b all over 2a. And what that means is that you're going to have 1 real root. So that's the situation that we're looking at here, because they're saying that the equation has exactly one solution. So how do we figure that out? We basically set b squared minus 4ac equal to 0. So let's plug it in. B squared is 4 minus 4 times a is 1. C, we'll leave it as c, equals 0. So this becomes 4 minus 4c equals 0. Add 4c to both sides, we get 4 equals 4c. Divide by 4 on both sides, c equals 1. And notice we got the same answer as we did before. Question 16 says the table gives some values of possible lengths x in miles of a monorail system and their corresponding costs to build f of x in millions of dollars. Which of the following equations models this relationship? So the easiest way to do this is really just pick one of these points, go through the answers, and start eliminating ones that don't work. I think the easiest one to pick is the middle, because 10 is an easy number. So you could think of 10 as the x value, 810 as the y value, or the f of x value. And now we're going to plug it into each one. So choice A, 81 times 10 does give 810, so A works for now. Choice B, 405 times 10 is going to be about 4,000, so that's not going to work. Choice C, 5 times 10 is 50, plus 405, that's 455, not 810, so C is out. Choice D, 405 times 10 is 4,000, again, plus 5, way off from A10. So we can eliminate D, and we know that A is the answer. And if you were more comfortable on your calculator, if you were to go through each of these, you'd find that each of these three values does fit for A, but not for any of the others. Question 17, a set of data is represented by the scatter plot in the portion of the xy plane shown. Which of the following linear equations best models the data? Notice that all the answers are essentially in y equals mx plus b form, which is a line. And the way this works is that based on the points, you're going to sort of superimpose a line that kind of captures all of them. So if they were to do this, they'd probably do something like that. I'm just guessing. And now we have to find the equation of the line that best matches the data. So the first thing I'm going to notice is that since my line slants this way, I know it's going to have a negative slope. So I'm going to eliminate choice B because this slope is positive 0.28. And looking at the other slopes, it's either going to be 0.3 or negative 6. To figure that out, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take two test points. It looks like this one falls nicely, and so does this one. To calculate slope, we're going to do rise over run, change in y over change in x. Change in y, 24 minus 18 is 6. Change in x, 24 minus 8 is about 16. So if the slope is negative 6 over 16, that's about a third. So it's definitely not 6. So I'm going to eliminate C and D, and the answer is A. The other thing to notice about this equation is where is the y-intercept? One thing that the SAT often tricks you on is they don't give you the origin, and that's why they said a portion of the xy plane. So the xy plane actually goes 4, 2, 0, and the y-axis is actually somewhere around here. So if we were to extend this line, the y-intercept, my guess, would be somewhere around 28, 29. They're saying it's 26.2. I guess it means that my line is not that accurate, but it's certainly not down here in the 18 area, especially because there's this big portion of the graph that they don't show us. So just keep that in mind for other problems in which they're asking for the y-intercept and they're not showing you the actual axis because they're starting at some arbitrary number. In this case, it's 6. Questions 18 and 19 are about this chart. A certain book is available from a publishing company in both hardcover and paperback. The table shows the revenue and cost in 2016 for each of the hardcover and paperback books produced by the company. A relatively straightforward chart. Question 18 says, in 2016, the total cost for 200 of the books that were sold was between 2,200 and 2,400. Which of the following could be the number of hardcover books that were sold? So the easiest way to do this problem is going to be just working backwards from the answer. That's always a possibility when you see the phrase which of the following in the problem. Just on a very quick glance, if I know the cost of the hardcover books is $14, I automatically know that 200 is going to be too large because 200 times 14 is going to be 2,800, which basically exceeds the range that they're saying was the cost. So choice D is going to be out. And then out of A, B, and C, probably the best strategy is to go with choice B since it's right in the middle. If choice B doesn't work and if it's too small, you know the answer is C. And if it's too large, then we know that the answer is A. So let's do it the same way. If 120 hardcover books were sold and the cost was 14 each, you could do this on your calculator. 120 times 14 is going to be 1680. If 120 hardcover were sold and the total number of books was 200, that means 80 paperbacks were sold at a cost of $10 each. So multiply that together, that's obviously 800. And therefore, when you add 1600 plus 800, the total revenue is going to be 2480. Still too large because our upper limit is 2400. So automatically, you know that the answer is going to be A. If you wanted to check that real quick, you can do 80 times 14, which is the cost of the hardcover. That's 1120. 80 hardcover means 120 paperbacks were sold at $10 each was the cost. So that's 1200. 1200 plus 1120 is going to be 2320. And that's right in between 2200 and 2400. Now, it does pay to know how to do this problem the real way, only because this is a very common theme on the SAT, and they could ask this question in the free response section, and you won't be able to work backwards from the answer. So the way that you do this is you have to set up a system of equations. If we assume that the number of hardcover books sold was X and the number of paperbacks sold was Y, we can make two equations knowing the quantity and the cost. So the total was 200. I'm going to do it over here. X plus Y equals 200. And given that they're giving us a range of the costs, we can calculate the lower range for the numbers as well as the upper range. So if the hardcover books cost $14, that's going to be 14X plus paperbacks cost $10, that's 10Y. Total cost, we'll do 2200 first. Now I'm just going to do simple substitution for X. If we subtract Y from both sides, X is going to be equal to 200 minus Y. So I'm going to substitute in here 200 minus Y plus 10Y equals 2200. Multiply this out, we get 2800 minus 14Y plus 10Y equals 2200. Simplify this, it becomes 2800 minus 4y equals 2200. Add 4y to both sides and subtract 2200 from both sides. We're left with 600. Divide by 4 on both sides. Y is going to be equal to 150, and that means X is going to be equal to 50. So what that tells us is, given the range of 2200, or if the total cost is 2200, the number of hardcover books that were sold has to be 50. So all that really tells us is that all these answers qualify. So to get the upper range, you would basically do the same math. You would do X plus Y equals 200. Here, 14X plus 10Y would equal 2400. And the math is actually going to be the same all the way down to this line right over here. So this is going to say 2800 minus 4y equals 2400. And then do the same thing, add 4y to both sides, subtract 2400 from both sides. We get 4y is 400, divide by 4, y equals 100. If y is 100, x is also 100. And now we know the range for the number of hardcover books that were sold. It's got to be between 50 and 100, and therefore that's why our answer is going to be A. So it really could have been any number, 50, 51, 52, but since they're giving us these choices, only one of them could work. Question 19, an analyst estimates that the cost of each of the paperback books will increase 50 cents each year after 2016. Which of the following models the cost in dollars of each of the paperback books T years after 2016? So you'll notice that all your answer choices are in the form y equals mx plus b. This is obviously a linear function. If the cost is going to increase 50 cents each year, then you know that you have to multiply 50 cents times the number of years, because after 1 year, it's going to increase 50 cents. After 2 years, it's going to increase 2 times 50 cents, or $1. After 3 years, it's going to increase 3 times 50 cents, or $1.50. So that eliminates choices A and B, because you're not multiplying 10 or 18 by t. You have to multiply 0.5 by t. And then the only question is, do we start off with 10 or 18? And for that, you just have to look up at the graph, and you'll see that the cost is 10. So that means we eliminate choice D. They just put that in there to confuse you, and the answer is going to be C. Question 20, line M is defined by y equals blah, blah, blah. Line P is parallel to line M in the xy plane and passes through the point 4, -3. Which equation defines line P? So obviously this is y equals mx plus b form, where m is the slope. Given that they're parallel, they're going to have the same slopes. That's why all the answer choices have -3/4 as m. The only thing that differs between them is the b term, which is the y-intercept. So really the fastest way to do this is to use the slope, the fact that it's -3/4, and then plug in 0.43 as well as 0.0, y, because that's going to be the y-intercept. So we know the top is going to be change in y divided by change in x. And let's consider that we're using the points 4, -3, as well as 0, y. And I'm going to consider this my 1 and this my 2. So -3/4 equals y2 is y minus y1 is -3. x2 is 0 minus x1 is 4. Multiply both sides by -4. I get +3 equals y plus 3. Subtract 3 from both sides. We get y equals 0. So that means that the y-intercept is the origin. So that's 0, 0. And therefore your b term is going to be 0, and that's why the answer is B. And of course you should know the more general way to do this, which is using the point slope formula. We showed how to get that in section 3 on one of the math problems. So very quickly now, if that's going to be x2 minus x1 times the slope equals y2 minus y1, and the point that we're considering is 4, -3. So let's plug that in. I'm going to consider that my second point. So that becomes 4 minus x times -3/4 equals -3 minus y. Now I'm going to multiply the whole equation by 4, and that's going to give us 4 minus x still times -3 equals -12 minus 4y. We can multiply this out. This becomes -12 plus 3x equals -12 minus 4y. -12 and -12 subtract out. We're left with 3x equals -4y. Divide both sides by 4. We get y equals -3/4 x. And so what we're left with is the actual equation of the line, which is choice B. Question 21, which of the following additional measurements to the triangle provides enough information to determine the length of AB? And then they give us 2 measurements. Now this is very similar to the triangle question in section 3. If you haven't watched it, go back and watch that video. But in summary, what we said is that this question is really the same type of question as asking about congruent triangles. So if any of these criteria or measurements gives us enough information to prove that this triangle is congruent to another with the same measurements, that means we have one fixed triangle and there's only one possibility, and therefore the side length of AB is going to be determined. So the criteria again is side, 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 angle, side, angle, side, angle, 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 side, and don't forget in right triangles we've got hypotenuse, leg. First piece of information that they want to give us is the length of AC. So if we know the length of AC, then yes, we have a hypotenuse and we have a leg, and so that's going to mean that we can determine the length of AB, obviously by Pythagorean theorem also. And the second piece of information, let's say we know the measure of angle ABC, that's over here. Then we have angle side, which also works, so choice 2 is going to work, and therefore the answer is C, either 1 or 2. Question 22, the solution to which system of inequalities is represented by the shaded region of the graph? Notice all the answer choices have two equations because we have two lines in the graph. Let's do the easier one. This line is obviously y equals 7, and given that the shaded region is below the line, we know it's going to be y is less than or equal to 7. Less than or equal to because it's a solid line as opposed to a dotted line, in which case it would be y is less than, because that means you're not including the points in the line. So looking at the answer choices, we'll cross off choice C. It's not x is less than or equal to 7. And then notice what we're left with. We don't even have to know the equation of this line because they're exactly the same. The only thing we have to know is the shaded region above or below? It's obviously above the line, so that means y is going to be greater or equal to 2x plus 1 in this case, and so the answer is B. And in case you were wondering, you can easily calculate the equation of the line. Let's just take this point here and that point there, calculate the slope. That's 2 over 1. We know that the y-intercept is 1, so therefore the equation of the line is going to be y equals 2x plus 1, and because the shaded region is above, we said it's y is greater or equal to 2x plus 1. Question 23, we've got a frequency table. It says Paulina has 28 books in her collection. The frequency table summarizes the number of pages in each book. If she buys a new book that has 62 pages, how will this impact the mean and median numbers of pages of the books in her collection? So her new book is 62 pages, right? If you add that to the list, 62 would fall here, and she bought one book. Since 62 is the largest number, obviously, wherever the average is, it's going to go up. So given that the average is going to go up, we're going to cross off choice B because it's not going to decrease, and we'll cross off choice D. Now, what's going to happen to the median? To know that, we actually have to figure out what the median is. So the median is the middle value. Now, if you were to list this out, you could do 46, 47, 47, then 48, and you'd end up writing it 4 times. And if you keep listing it out, the middle value in your whole list is going to be the median. In this case, we already know that she's got 28 books total. So the median is going to be between the 14th and the 15th, or really the average of the 14th and the 15th value in that list. We don't actually have to write that out. All we need to know is where the 14th number falls. Given that they put this in order for us already, we just have to total these up. So there's going to be 146, and then you have 2 47s. That's 3 elements in the list. If you have 4 48s, you add that, then we're up to 7. If you have 5 49s, that's going to be 12. And then if you have 5 50s, that's going to be 17 numbers listed. So that tells us that 50 is going to be the median, because if the median is between 14 and 15, the 14th and 15th element is going to be one of the 50s. What happens when we add 1 to the book? Well, the total number of books goes from 28 to 29, and the middle value in 29 is going to be the 15th book. So is the median going to change? Well, if 50 takes us all the way up to 17 elements, the median is still going to be 50. So what's going to happen is the median is going to stay the same. Therefore, the answer is going to be choice C, where it says stay the same. Question 24, a recipe requires F cups of flour. Arnold accidentally used 50% more flour than the recipe required. How much flour did Arnold use in terms of F? So when you see this problem, I want you to see it as a percent increase problem or a percent decrease, because if you increase by 50%, what you're going to be left with is 150% of the original. So mathematically, what's 150% of the original? It's 1.5 times the original. And so the answer is going to be D. Now we talked about this in other videos. Let's say you have like a 5% tax. You can calculate 5% of the original, add it on, but the shortcut would be to multiply your original by 1.05 because that takes into account the original amount plus the 5% that's added. Let's say you have a 0.5% tax, you're going to multiply it by 1.005 times the original. And this works the same way. Let's say you have a 50% decrease in value. Let's say there's a discount. You're going to multiply your original by 0.5 because after you take away 50%, you're left with 50% of the original value. A decrease in 5%, you're going to multiply it by 0.95. A decrease in 0.5%, you're going to multiply by 0.995 because when you decrease by 0.5%, you're left with 99.5% of the original value. So this is kind of the main skill that you need to keep in mind for the SAT. This is really just a percent increase problem. 25. The table shows the distribution of objects in a collection by shape and color. If a triangle is selected at random, what is the probability that the selected triangle is red? So very simple. The total number of triangles is 12. What's the probability that it's red? It's 5. So that's going to be 5 out of 12, which is choice B. 26. A group of students participated in a study. It was determined that for each hour of experience performing a certain task, the time necessary for each student to complete the task decreased by 5%. Wendy took 30 minutes to complete the task with no experience. Which function models the amount of time in minutes it'll take Wendy to complete the task after X hours of experience? So these are all exponential functions. The way they work is you put the original value first and then you multiply it by the factor that you're changing it by. So Wendy's original time was 30 minutes. That makes sense, except in choice D. So we'll cross it off. What they're doing is they're mixing up the original with the change. If you're decreasing by 5%, we talked about this in question 25, how much are you left with? You're left with 95% of your original. So how do you calculate 95%? You multiply the original by 0.95, and that automatically means C is going to be the answer because each time she gets another hour of experience, the time she takes to complete the task decreases by 5%, which means it's 95% of the new time. So each time she gets an hour of experience, she gets multiplied by 0.95, and that's represented by the exponents. So very quickly looking at choices A and B, what's going on in choice A is if you're multiplying by 0.05, what that's really saying is that for each hour of experience she gets, the time that she performs the task decreases by 95% because you're left with 5%. In choice B, this would represent a 50% decrease because each time you take away 50%, you're left with 0.5. And like we said in choice D, what that represents is you start with 95, but then if you're left with 0.3, that represents a 70% decrease in time. So all the answers are off in one or more ways. Question 27, an equation for the graph shown is blah, 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 where B is a constant. What is the value of B? So just by looking at this graph, I know that the answer is going to be 3. Why? Because I can focus on the zeros of the graph, and this is a quadratic, so if you know the zeros of a quadratic, then really you can just write it out. It's going to be equal to y equals x minus 1, which takes care of this one, times x plus 3. And why does that work? Because when the graph crosses the x-axis, that means y is equal to 0, and you guys know from doing quadratics that if you've got two factors multiplied together and the product is 0, either x minus 1 equals 0 or x plus 3 equals 0, and therefore x is either equal to 1 or x is equal to negative 3, which is exactly what we see on the graph. This is going to be negative 3, 0. This is going to be 1, 0. And so therefore your equation is going to be x minus 1 times x plus 3, and therefore B is 3. Question 28, a school club is paid $315 for recycling C pounds of aluminum cans and P tons of paper. The equation blah 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 represents the situation. What is the interpretation of 60p in this context? So it pays to know what it is before you actually look at the answer choices. Given that P means the tons of paper and the whole equation is the cost, when you multiply 60 times P, 60 is probably the price that they're paid in dollars for each ton of paper, because if they're recycling 1 ton of paper, they're going to get 60. If they're recycling 2 tons of paper, they're going to get 120, and so on. So what is 60p itself? It's basically the total money that they're getting for the tons of paper that are recycled, regardless of how many tons it is. So let's look at the answer choices. A, the total weight in tons of paper the club has recycled. Well, we said that the whole equation is about price. So this is a price value, this is a price value. The total weight in tons that they recycle is actually P itself, not 60p, so A is out. Choice B, the total amount in dollars the club is paid for each ton of paper recycled. This is close, but what makes it wrong is that they say each ton. If you're dividing it into each ton, it's going to be 60 itself, because that's what we showed right over here. Choice C, the total weight in tons of all the aluminum cans and paper the club recycled. So given that this equation is about price, if you want just the weight, you're going to have to add C plus P together. But also keep in mind that C is in pounds and P is in tons. So your C is actually going to have to be converted to tons before this expression actually means something. Regardless, it's not weight. That's what makes it wrong. So the answer is not C. Choice D, the total amount in dollars the club is paid for P tons of recycled paper. So yeah, this is basically saying the total amount that you're getting for the paper that's recycled, and that's going to be choice D. Question 29, what is the sum of the solutions to the given equation? So the reason there's going to be more than one solution is because when you take the square root of both sides, you have to consider the positive and the negative possibilities. So let's do that. X minus 3 is either going to be equal to positive 9, or x minus 3 is going to be equal to negative 9. Very simple algebra, x is equal to 12 or x is equal to negative 6. These are your solutions, and you can check them by plugging them back in. So the sum of the solutions is going to be 12 plus negative 6, which is positive 6, and B is the answer. Question 30, each of the 3 data sets represented by 3 dot plots has 15 values. The medians of data sets A, B, and C are A, B, and C respectively. What is the relationship between A, B, and C? So given that this is very nicely laid out for us, we can actually figure out the median for each set. If each set has 15 values, the median is going to be the middle value when you list them all out from least to greatest, and that's going to be the 8th value. So what we can do is we can count them off in numerical order and see which one the 8th is. Let's do that. Data set A, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So the median is right over here. Or it could be any of these if you're counting up. Doesn't really matter, they're all the same. But the median in data set A is 5. Set B, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The median here is also 5. Set C, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Data set C, the median is also 5. And so the median is 5 for all of them, and that means the answer is choice D. Question 31, the side length of square ABCD is twice the side length of square EFGH. If the area of EFGH is 9, what is the area of ABCD? So we can do a very quick diagram. That's ABCD, and that's twice the length of EFGH. It says the area is 9, which means that the sides of this square is 3. And if the length here is twice that means this side is 6. So the area of ABCD is 6 squared, or 36. And that's the answer. Question 32, the scatter plot shows 11 data points along with a line of best fit for the data. For how many of the data points does the line of best fit predict a y value that is less than the actual y value? So this is basically saying how many of the data points are more than the predicted or above the line. So all we have to do is look at it and count. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that's going to be the answer. Question 33, we have this equation. In the given equation, c is a constant. The equation has no solution. What is the value of c? So whenever you have problems that deal with no solution or infinite solutions, what you want to do is get the x value to drop out and then see what you're left with. So I'm going to rewrite the equation over here. What I'll notice is that if I want the x values to drop out, I can make c equal to 1/4. Because then what happens is 1/4 x minus 1/4 x is 0. Then we're left with 0 equals 2. That's a contradiction, so that actually means this original equation, where c is 1/4, has no solution, because no matter what value you plug in for x, 0 is never equal to 2, and so the answer is going to be 1/4. By the way, if you wanted to find a value for c, in which the equation has infinite solutions, that's actually going to be much harder. Typically on the SAT, what you'd want to do is you want to manipulate the equation two ways. You'd want to say 1/4 x plus 2 equals 1/4 x plus 2. So not only did I substitute 1/4 for c, I also changed the equation, because when you subtract 1/4 x on both sides, you're going to be left with 2 equals 2. And this works all the time, so no matter what value of x you have, 2 is always equal to 2. So this equation has infinite solutions. This equation has no solutions. So that's what you want to keep in mind on the SAT. Question 34, what number is 1% greater than 7,000? So like we talked about on problems before, you could think of this as a percent increase problem, because if you increase 7 by 1%, that's the same as adding 1% to 7. So in your calculator, the fastest way to do that is multiply 7,000 by 1.01, which takes into consideration the 0.1% increase as well as the original. When you do that, you're going to get 7,070, and that's the answer. If you're doing this in your head, you can quickly figure out what's 1% of 7,000 by moving the decimal place 2 points over. So that tells you that 70 is 1% of 1,000. Add 70 to 7,000, you get 7,070. So that's another way to do it. Question 35 and 36 are based on this table. I'm not going to read all this because it's kind of useless. Question 35 says, if the volume of component B in the liquid mixture is 1 milliliter, what is the total volume in milliliters of the mixture? So you can just use a simple proportion. We know that 1 milliliter is equal to 25%. They want to know what's the total, so that's 100%. All you have to do is cross multiply 1 times 100 divided by 25. X is going to equal to 4. In this case, it's milliliters, but that's the answer, and that's really all you have to do. If you wanted to do this another way, you could have said that 25% or 0.25 of the total is equal to 1. And then basically you just, on your calculator or in your head, divide 1 divided by 0.25, and you're going to get that x is equal to 4. Same idea, doesn't really matter, whatever is easier for you, use that method. Question 36, it says the procedure was applied to a new sample of 9 milliliters of liquid mixture to extract component C. Due to the loss of volume from the procedure, the extracted volume of component C was only 90% of the original volume of this component. What was the extracted volume of component C? So the first thing we have to figure out is how much of component C is in the 9 milliliters. If component C is 20%, we have to figure out what is 20% of 9 milliliters. So our first calculation is going to be 0.20 times 9 milliliters. If you do that on your calculator, you're going to get 1.8. And that's how much of component C exists in the 9 milliliter mixture. Now they're saying once they extracted it, they only got 90% of that. So our next calculation is going to be, what is 90% or 0.9 of 1.8? Again, do that on your calculator and you're going to get 1.62. So 1.62 is the amount of component C that was extracted after they lost about 90%. And so that's the answer. Question 37, the functions f and g are defined above, where b is a constant. If f of x times g of x equals blah, 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 what is the value of b? So keep in mind that we're multiplying these functions together. That's going to look like x squared plus bx times 3x squared minus 9x. And all that equals 3x to the fourth minus 8x cubed minus 3x squared. So this looks like a lot of work, but you actually don't have to do it. You guys know that when you FOIL, that means first, outer, inner, last terms. The first term times the first term, x squared times x squared, is going to give you your x cubed term. The outer terms, x squared times 9x, is going to contribute to the cubed terms, as are the inner terms, bx times 3x squared. It's also going to give you an x cubed term. I want to focus on just the squared terms. This is the last two, bx times 9x, because that's the simplest. If we calculate bx times negative 9x, that is the only combination that's going to give us negative 3x squared, and these things don't mix. So if we calculate this by itself, we'll be able to figure out b. So bx times negative 9x is negative 9bx squared equals negative 3x squared. Divide both sides by negative 1 and divide by negative x squared. We get 9b equals 3. b equals 1/3, and that's our answer. So you really didn't have to FOIL this whole thing. You just had to focus on your quadratic term or your square term, because that's all we needed to do if we were considering the last two terms. Question 38, the rectangular mirror shown above has width 3 feet and length 5 feet, and is surrounded by a mosaic border with a width of x feet. If the area of the mirror with the border is 35 square feet, what is the width x in feet? So let's label our diagram. The mirror is 3 by 5, and we know the total is 35, and they want to know x. So if you're a very methodical person, you'll know that if this is 3 by 5, then the area of the mirror is 15. If the total area is 35, we can subtract it, and that means the area of the frame is 20. But that actually gets really complicated because you don't really know, given that the area of the frame is 20, exactly how thick it is all around. So sometimes on the SAT, rather than doing things, the real way, you can just play around with the numbers. So if I know the area of the border is 35, I'm going to start thinking of factors of 35. And the first ones that come to mind is 5 and 7. That would work out nicely because if this whole length was 5 from here to here, and this whole length was 7 from here to here, look how nicely that works out, because the inner length is 3. So to get from 3 to 5, you just have to add 1 here, and over here to get from 5 to 7, you're doing the same thing. Add in 1 here and 1 here. And that matches up with this idea here that the frame has a consistent width, both top and bottom. So really, that means the answer is going to be 1, and all we really had to do was look at the diagram and think of some factors for 35.